Authenticity is currency. Authenticity is what is going to set you apart or keep you in the crowd. And I see so many men and women in this space who are playing it safe and they're not willing to, let's just say, get naked in front of the mirror.
Welcome to How She Built It. I'm Carrie Augustine Boyle, CEO of Automate and Elevate. Around here, success isn't accidental, it's built. Christine's story isn't a straight line. It's a layered one. Over a decade in foster care, 77 children through her home, 2 adopted as her own, and 2 biological sons. And somewhere in the middle of all that, an identity crisis that brought her to her knees. She describes the moment as finding herself on a hallway floor with nothing left, and that's where Jesus met her. That rock bottom became the foundation for everything she built. Her pivot into health and wellness coaching wasn't just professional, it was personal restoration. She lost 40 pounds herself and now helps women over 40 do the same by addressing what most coaches miss: cortisol and hormone balance. Over $6 million in sales since launching with her new company, 419,000 followers, an Amazon triple best-selling author and top 2% podcast host, and she's launching a new podcast this week. Christine, I am so excited to have you on and cannot wait to hear more about your story and your impact. So let's start, for anyone listening that doesn't know you, bring us back to the beginning.
So my husband and I, it started with us wanting to adopt one child, and we looked at international adoption. And then we started getting the cost of adoption. I was so naive. I had no idea that we were talking 6 figures to adopt a child. I came up with all kinds of ideas. We could refinance our house. We could take a second, all kinds of wild ideas. But then I got a phone call one day from a caseworker in the state that we lived in. And she said, "I heard that you and your family would like to adopt. Would you like to adopt through the foster care system because it's free?" And I thought, this is wild that she would even have my information. And then, second of all, there's got to be a catch. It can't possibly be free. So we went in and we met with her. That turned into fostering for 10 years. We adopted both of our daughters, and I truly fell in love with being a foster parent. My husband and I created a nonprofit for Christmas gifts for foster kiddos. It was truly just it had become my identity. I poured every bit of everything into it, and I absolutely loved helping these kiddos. It was such a joy.
I can imagine that
Yeah.
is truly a life mission, girl. And it's crazy to hear because, of course, I've seen, movies. I don't know anyone that's fostered. So I'm going to use movies as an example. I have seen movies where people have mentioned that it cost that much money. So to hear you say that it truly is a 6-figure investment, that is crazy. And that boggles my mind because we're talking about kids, right? That, need help, right? They need somewhere to go.
Well, and that was the crazy thing. And then that's not even including the wait time. So I was told, with different countries, it could be 3 years, it could be longer, it could be you're just placed on a wait list. And I'm super impatient. And I was like, I want a child tomorrow. So this is a really long time, a lot of money, and you invest, $5,000 to $10,000, and that's just to get started. And that's not even guaranteeing that you're going to be able to adopt. And for me, I was young at the time. I didn't understand the adoption process. So all I thought was, I would rather invest this money into our child versus pay for the process to even be able to adopt. So it was truly such a blessing. What I didn't understand is when she said free to adopt. Monetarily, that was kind of somewhat true, but emotionally, it cost us more than any 6-figure amount we could have put into adopting one child. But there were so many incredible lessons that we learned along the way. So when I say free, yes, it's free, but emotionally, absolutely not.
I can imagine. I can't even begin to wrap my
Yeah.
head around what that experience must be like and the emotional roller coaster that you go through. So, on that note, talking about emotions, having that moment where you were on a hallway floor, feeling like you had hit rock bottom. Bring us there. What were you feeling? What led you to get to that point? What were the things that potentially happened before that? Because I'm hearing that was essentially the moment where things changed for you.
It truly was, and that was where we had realized our foster care journey was coming to an end. One of the things that they tell you as a foster parent is don't have your foster kiddos moved. Try and keep them in your placement because a lot of times kiddos are really hard or maybe they're not a good fit for your home, so you can ask for a different placement. And what happens though is they say that can cause attachment issues for your foster kiddos. What they never told me was this can cause a lot of emotional trauma for your own kiddos, loving and saying goodbye and meeting and saying goodbye. 77 kiddos is what our children, our bio and adoptive kiddos had to live through. And so when
Mhm.
we got to the point of we need to allow our kiddos, adoptive, I mean, we see them as the same, our kids to heal, and I need to heal at that point, what I hadn't shared is that my stomach had grown so big, and I had went to the doctor, and I actually had precancerous cells in one of my ovaries, and it was doubling in size, and so she got me into surgery very quickly, but that was the point where my body was keeping the score. I
Mhm.
was beyond exhausted and struggling with so many health crises, and our kids were just trying to make it through the journey. And so that was at 10 years. And I remember knowing our journey was done and we needed to focus on our kids, but it had become my whole identity. So for me, I thought I was going to be a foster parent until I was old and not walking and maybe in a wheelchair and barely functioning, and I would still be loving these kids. And so for me, I was crying and I was so sad because this is not what I imagined. I thought I would be doing this forever, but truly we had to prioritize our family. I was sobbing. I was so devastated at the thought that I felt like God gave me this identity,
Mhm.
and I felt like you only give one identity. And so I thought, life is over. What am I going to do with the rest of my life? And that's truly what I thought is, do I go back to college? Do I how can I work because our daughters were had all of our kids had so much trauma that I really needed to be at home with them. I was a homeschool mom. And I thought, how do I undo everything I've ever known? And then how do I find something new? And I felt like that moment of my entire identity is gone. And I just broke down crying. And that's where, and I have grown up in church my whole life,
Mhm.
but I always imagined God like this big, mean guy up in the sky. And he's like, how dare you? You woke up late. I don't know if you're gonna make it. I just imagined him as this big judgmental guy in the sky. And that was the first time that I actually felt like a Holy Spirit inside of me, which is wild to me because I was 37 years old and I've gone to church every single day or every single week in my life and church camps, you name it. And that was the first time I realized God is compassionate and he's loving and he's not that big mean guy in the sky. And I just felt so much brokenness, but almost so much peace that things are gonna be okay, and I have no idea how, and that's exactly what happened. He unraveled everything. We sold our house. We had a huge house because you imagine we had up to 11 kiddos at one time. Everything unraveled. We found the perfect house that we wanted to move into that was great for our family. Everything just fell into place, and it took me a while to figure out what the new path was, but it was just like this continual breadcrumb of it's gonna be okay, here's one piece, here's one piece, here's one piece.
Thank you for sharing all that because as someone who recently myself got back into church, I hadn't gone to church in probably over 20 years. And I was a Catholic schoolgirl and always had faith and always knew God was there and, there is a God and there's a bigger purpose. But hearing you talk about how, you went through these trials and tribulations, you kind of hit this rock bottom, you were questioning what, your next steps were, questioning life, like your purpose, and hearing that you got that clarity, that God showed up for you, that the breadcrumbs were laid out, and just where I am, I had a friend share with me yesterday that I am on like I forget how she phrased it. Like I'm like the baby journey right now because I just got back into church just I think 8 months ago maybe. And it feels good and it feels really aligned. And I definitely can relate to a lot of the things you just said because I'm now having those moments and I'm seeing God show up and I'm seeing that the blessings are now coming and it's awesome.
Yeah, It was amazing how and I growing up, I always felt like a lot of pressure, like you're gonna, you need to show up to church, you need to do the right thing, you need to do good, but I was never somebody who had read my Bible. I always had a Bible, but it
Mhm.
seemed like, you would go to like youth group and you would learn a Bible verse, but it didn't resonate. And it finally took to this place where I hit rock bottom. And now I truly believe God allowed that
Mhm.
because I think he wants to meet us and he'll wait. He's super patient. So it took to that moment. I think you have to get to the end of yourself. And I
Mhm.
truly was at the end of myself. I had nothing left. And in my mind, and it's crazy looking back because I'm like, well, I had my four amazing kids and I had my husband and we had a brand new house and all these amazing things. But to me, and when you lose your identity on everything you thought you were supposed to be, it's gutting.
Mhm. You got that right. You feel depleted, right? Let's talk about how that led to you wanting to get healthy. You hit rock bottom. You feel like you had this, what's my purpose? You had the health scare, right? So, how did that transition into losing weight and getting healthy and essentially life's purpose? We're going to call it life's purpose. Everything
Yes.
I shared in the beginning of this episode, how many followers you have, how many people you've helped, the income that you've generated, the podcast that you started. How did that become the next step?
It's wild because looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, God allowed all these things. So when I was a foster parent, you would get a phone call in the middle of the night or during the day, and it would say, we have a child, and they would give you a little bit of information, and then they would ask you to take the child. I had such a bleeding heart because I felt like somehow I can be a part of fixing this entire system. And those phone calls, trying to navigate new diagnoses for each of the kiddos that we took, right? Meeting with attorneys, all of these things spiked my cortisol and all the stories from all the kids and all the trauma that they were living through. My body was in fight or flight for years. So when we got to the place where we didn't have foster kids and we were in the home with our four kiddos, my body was having this nervous system dysregulation because I no longer had this constant cortisol spike.
Mhm.
I no longer had these dopamine hits and these adrenaline rushes. And what I realized is I needed to keep going to the doctors more. I ended up eventually needing a hysterectomy and I was placed on 3 different medications for anxiety and migraines and panic attacks. And it was truly because my body couldn't cope with this boring life in relation to what I had because I didn't have the skills because I was fostering from a place of trying to heal wounds that I had that I didn't even know. I started seeing a therapist, and then I saw this post one day online from a gal, and she said she was selling this amazing coffee and it was going to help with all the things that I was struggling with. And this was 8 years ago. And I thought, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing. This is solving all my problems." So I ordered it, but I also signed up for the business. And I had no clue what I was doing. But I thought, if this works, I want to yell it from the rooftops because this is like life's cure, right?
Mhm.
To all my
Yeah.
problems. When I tried it, I had never felt better. I felt incredible. And I started sharing it. And that was the first month that I shared it. And I made quite a bit of money that first month. And I thought, wow, I had no idea because prior to that, I had tried network marketing a little bit as a foster parent, but not with any other intention than just sharing some products. But then also, I started seeing, have you ever looked on Instagram and the most successful people had like these beautiful farmhouses with all the animals and all the kids. And for me at the time I was a foster parent, I was like, yes, I want goats and chickens and nannies and kids and this big, huge farmhouse. And so I was sold, but I didn't know how to get there. And I also didn't have the time because I was a foster parent, had way too many kiddos. But after, and I jumped back in, I remembered that vision of what was possible. I no longer wanted the chickens or the goats or the farm life or all the kids, but I thought, now what? And so that began that journey officially. And that company changed a lot of things. That was my first not great taste in network marketing, but it was also my first great taste. Like I learned so much and I learned the income potential. And I truly didn't understand at that point, those products were helping me, but it was kind of like a mask, kind of a band aid.
Mhm.
but it also unveiled some of the wounds that I had. If you've ever taken a look, like, at your true self in the mirror emotionally,
Mhm.
almost like you're looking at yourself naked emotionally, it's overwhelming.
Oh, yeah. That can definitely be a moment where you're
Yeah.
like, "Ooh, wait, is that really me?" Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, my choice was I could which was very obvious, I could work with therapists, and then I heard of this thing called coaches, and I thought, "I think I would rather try this coach route," and so I started working with coaches and uncovering wounds that I had and getting they were helping me work through these things,
Mhm.
and that's when I realized, my goodness, everyone wanted to give me a diagnosis. Everyone wanted to say, "This is what's wrong, and here's a medication." And I tried that route, and I kept gaining weight. I ended up drinking every single day. I ended up addicted to carbs and sugar, and I was so swollen with inflammation. I mean, it was truly and my mind was driven by anxiety.
I can't even imagine. So you basically had the external, right? You're inflamed, you're gaining weight. You had the internal, you just mentioned the emotional roller coaster, the anxiety. So it was kind of double-edged sword. So you
It
had
was.
this exposure to network marketing. I'm assuming when you were a foster mom, you maybe looked at the allure of making some money and then
Yeah.
you saw this product that people were posting about on social and I'm sure it was, that's me, that's me, that's me and, show me where to get this. You tried that. Fast forward into your current company that you're having epic success with, and tell us how you found that because you did touch on that was your first. I forget how you phrased it. As a former network marketer myself, we all have those experiences in network marketing that we learn from along
Yes.
the way.
So, leaving that previous company, I helped launch another company. There was a bunch of us and helped launch this company, and we had amazing success, and it was an incredible company until you saw behind the curtain. And then I realized, wait a minute, this is not what I thought it was.
Mhm.
And I think that's the most amazing thing is you can walk out of something and look at all the good and then all the bad, but even all the bad has good. Or when I knew I needed to leave that company, I had a list of all the things I wanted in a new company, or I was just not going to do network marketing anymore. I was truly at that point where I was like, this is not, I don't know if I can find my people. I don't know if I can find people who are truly rooted in integrity and people who will do what they say and people who won't change the comp plan or change the products or who are truly invested in the people who are growing the company. What I did realize at that previous company was the owner, the CEO of your company is the one who drives the ship. And so
Mhm.
I had to truly be 150% in alignment with the owner. I have to love the products. That's a non negotiable. But that's when I was really learning this is a cortisol piece. My body is addicted to this fight or flight stress response
Mhm.
and I knew the type of products I was looking for. It had to meet every single thing on my list. You know, like that those lists that people talk about when they're, "Is this the right husband?" It has every single thing.
Yes.
And it
Wow.
was the products helped with hormones and cortisol levels. They help support those, which is exactly what I was looking for. I knew that the previous version of me, they always say your person is the previous version of you.
Mhm.
That person that collapsed on the hallway floor because she felt she had completely lost her identity, it wasn't just about foster care. It was she had lost touch with her body. She had realized she had so many wounds that they were so unbearable. How do you heal all of these broken places? She realized God is different than who she thought her entire life.
Mhm.
And she was moving to a brand new house with her family and restarting. And so that person whose body was a mess, mind was a mess, heart was a mess, that was the person that I wanted to help.
I'm like hanging on every word because this everything you're saying is it's just the women out there that are, in my opinion, having the most success on social media or in network marketing or in a business. The women that have that servant heart that want to help the past version of themselves that have been through some sort of trauma or situation and they ended up on the other side. Not
Yeah.
saying you can't have success if you haven't had some sort of trauma in your life, but if you really are focusing on the transformation or the results or the support that you can give those people pays you back tenfold. It not only pays you back financially, it just pays you
But they're also emotionally just healing.
basically what I was looking for. Yes. It's
Yes.
paying you back monetarily because at the end of the day, we don't want to build businesses and not, financially make money, but to have those success stories or people that are sending you messages of appreciation or people that were potentially that woman on the floor like you were, it's rewarding. That's the word I was looking for. It's
Or
extremely rewarding. Since launching with this company, you have done over $6 million in sales. You've built this incredible audience on social media. You have this insane transformation story, the expertise, the systems, the credibility. I want to talk to that point. What does that look like on the back end? How do you support all of this? Essentially, what you've built, right? What you've built from learning a little bit about what works, what doesn't. You've built this audience. Tell us what Christine's day to day now looks like.
so your girl has super incredible, amazing ADHD. And I feel like this is the piece, like, you don't have to have it all together. It's this journey that you're continually working on and
Mhm.
refining and changing. And so for me, I realized I need to have days set up for what I do. I have a specific day that is my podcasting day. And of course, I'm going to go post content. I'm going to get in my stories and I'm going to support my team and work with, customers. But it's truly, I need a day that is just for podcasting. And then I need a day that's just for content. And then I have several days that are, just doing my office hours and getting the stuff done that I need to get done. I think one of the most important things, especially as you scale, is knowing that you can't do this alone. And so I think that's been one of the most profound things is partnering with you in the back end part of the business because 911 to everybody else. I am terrible with technology, and it's also paralyzing and overwhelming to me. Just because I feel like there's these tabs in your brain, and I know you and I have had this conversation before, that you want to get better in an area, but if
Mhm.
you take the time to get better in something you're not good at, you're not
Mhm.
actually stewarding the gifts that God has given you.
Mhm.
And so for me, that's the piece where finding the right people to partner with, partnering with you, where I know you and I are working on something that we're going to be launching soon. And it's truly just working with innovators who are the best in the area that they do and that they work in. And so when you can find those people, and so maybe it's like the best mindset coach that you can work with, or maybe it's the best tech person that you can work with. But when you find somebody who is truly super good at what they do, realizing you can't do this on your own as
Mhm.
well as you could partnered with other people.
100%. And you are totally speaking to my system's love language.
Yes.
And I appreciate you mentioning the ADHD part because you are the second person today that's actually used that expression with me before we got on to record. I had someone that I was talking to, and she mentioned having ADHD. She's also an entrepreneur. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, entrepreneurs I feel like all of us have a touch of that, like ADHD and wanting to, we have squirrel brain. Like, how do I change this? How do I
Yeah.
improve this? How do I make this better? But on that note, you also mentioned having a system and knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are. So for you, I love that you touched on having a system for your week, right? Knowing that you need to time block and have specific times that you're doing certain things, as well as delegating the things that don't light you up or the things that are going to take time, ridiculous amounts of time. Because at the end of the day, you guys, Christine has built a business that has done over $6 million in sales. You don't do that kind of revenue if you're trying to do it all yourself.
Well, and truly it's about too, it's about leveraging the people. And when you start speaking to the person that you once were, and you start talking about how your life has changed, you'll start attracting the people like you were talking about the valley. And I
Mhm.
truly have that belief that if you've made it through the fire, our obligation is to reach back and help other people get out of the fire. And it might not be they were a foster parent. It just might be that there's some part in your story that they resonate with. And so that's when people join your team and link arms with you. And then you can leverage the strengths. We have so many incredible people on our team that are really, really good at one or two specific areas. And so leveraging them because we can all build this together. And that's the other crazy part I want to touch on is in other companies that I've been a part of, it was so much competition. And it was, don't tell me, I'm not going to tell you my team's, systems and don't tell me yours. And it's almost like you have to hide everything.
Mhm.
But when you really truly realize that your people are not my people because you're speaking from authenticity and you're
Mhm.
standing in who you are and who you're meant to be, you'll realize their person's people are never meant to be your people. So you don't even have to be in competition with them because you don't even want their people.
Mic drop moment. I wish we could take that sentence and just put it out into the social media stratosphere because it is unfortunate that there is a lot of competition out there and it's unwarranted. And
Yes.
if anything, what Christine is sharing is a testament to her success. There's proof in the pudding, as they say, as my grandma has said for years. And Christine is showing us what's possible. You don't have to have the scarcity mindset. There are more people out there. There are more lives to impact, more people to help transform.
There
So,
is. And it's when you anchor into your own story and get vulnerable, and I feel like that's the piece. There's so many people online right now, and the online selling space is loud and noisy right now
Mhm.
because everybody's trying to copy everybody else's content, and so you don't know who to trust. When you're anchored into your own story, there's nobody
Mhm.
else who can tell my story the way I can tell my story. And there's nobody else who can tell your story the way that you tell your story. And when you get really, really vulnerable and you risk taking off the mask, allowing people to see who you truly are, you will attract your people. But when you're trying to copy somebody else's content and even do things the way somebody else is doing them,
Mhm.
you're not being all of you because none of us do anything the same way.
yep, 100%. And this is the piece that I want every woman that's building an online business to really sit with, that Christine's story is proof that specificity here is not limitation. It's actually a magnet. So the more specific you get, the more those right people are going to find you. And if you pair that with the systems that actually move people through your world, then that's where your content is going to become income. What do you think women who are building businesses, I'm going to say in the online space, especially in your niche, health and wellness, avoid talking about that's costing them their growth, that's costing them that success?
Wow.
Loaded question. I feel like I kind of know the answer because you might have just touched on it a little bit. But if you had someone come to you or you're looking at someone from afar, what is costing them that success that they're chasing, but it's not showing up?
I think this is something that I do a lot is I'll read people's posts and I'm like, "That's good, but it's not real." And especially in a day and age where ChatGPT can do everything for us, it's so easy to have chat write you a post and go post it. But authenticity is currency. Authenticity is what is going to set you apart or keep you in the crowd. And I see so many men and women in this space who are playing it safe and they're not willing to, let's just say, get naked in front of the mirror and say, what wrecked me? What were the hardest, deepest, most challenging lessons I've ever learned? And how can I help somebody else who's walking through this? The lesson, it doesn't have to be specific. It can be a lesson that you learned and it will apply to so many people in so many situations. When I talk about I was addicted to drinking alcohol, that connects to a lot of people. And it started out with it socially looks fine to drink wine online. Maybe this is a piece that I'm missing out on. But there's a lot of people, maybe they connect because they have people who struggle with alcoholism in their family. Maybe they connect because they're emotionally burnt out and maybe they're addicted to sugar, right? And it's just that addictive, numbing behavior that people are doing that they connect with. Unless I shared my story, nobody else is going to connect with me. So if I'm using the plain copy and paste verbiage that somebody else is, It's also that authentic energy behind my excitement of what I'm sharing.
I hope y'all took notes and wrote that down because authenticity is currency is I want to write that down and print it out and put it on my wall. And it's something that over the years personally has fueled me in my business. And this is a moment of vulnerability for myself. I've been building a business online for over 10 years and I've caught a lot of, and many of you listening might relate to this, family slack. Your family sees all this stuff you post, and I've been the topic of many holiday conversations at the table because I get real and gritty and share all the things on social. If anything you can take from what I've been through personally, as well as what Christine just shared, if you can tune that out, get rid of the people who, how do they say it, Christine? If they don't affect your paycheck, don't take their opinion, right? Don't, if they're not giving
If
you
they're not
money.
paying your bills,
Yes, if they're not paying your bills, don't listen to them because
yeah,
Christine just hit the nail on the head. Authenticity, especially in a world where we have AI coming at us from all angles and you can have ChatGPT or Claude write your post in 10 seconds. Is that you? Is that really the true authentic you? Is that the the version of you that is looking in the mirror real raw and naked like Christine just said? So, that is one worth definitely noting down. Authenticity is currency, and it's so true, especially in the world that we live in. So, what I'm actually most excited to roll out, and I've been sitting on the edge of my seat because I wanted to share this right in the beginning. Christine has a brand new podcast that is actually coming later this week. Tell us about it because you're already a proven podcast host with a top 2% podcast. And if you want, you could tell us a teeny bit about that and maybe what inspired the new one.
my the podcast that I launched in 2023, it's called What to Expect While Fostering and Adopting. It is truly the coulda, woulda, shouldas that I share, and I bring guests on and we talk about foster care and adoption and really just the nitty-gritty truths, everything that's not said to help prepare people to foster and adopt. And that, as you've heard, is a previous version of me.
Mhm.
And the piece that has been brewing and building is the cortisol coach. And so when I went on Instagram, it's been 25, 6, 7 months now, and created the cortisol coach account. It was to help speak and share to the woman who was struggling with her hormones and cortisol levels. And I know it's gotten trendy and then it's not gone trendy and now everybody's talking about cortisol or knows about cortisol and people have told me you need to shift, you need to pivot, you need to change because nobody wants to watch like that kind of content anymore.
Mhm.
And the truth is, I can't shift or pivot because that's my story.
Mhm.
And so while it might be trendy and maybe someday it's not gonna be trendy, it doesn't matter because it's me.
Mhm.
And the cortisol is what wrecked my body. But it's something it's a hormone God gave us so that we can run away from bears and handle life. And so the next piece was the 8 years that I spent meeting with all kinds of specialists and doctors and being put on medication and having food allergy testing and the process of healing my body, but 8 years is too long.
Mhm.
And needing a hysterectomy, and then the hysterectomy caused issues that caused one of my kidneys to die. Like, anytime you have a surgery, you are taking a risk that things might not turn out well. Just launched this week, and the first episode drops on Friday of Cortisol Coach. And on that first episode, you're going to hear my whole journey. And then we already have guests lined up, amazing guests. It's for women over 40 or under 40, approaching 40, who are struggling with perimenopause, menopause, hormones, cortisol levels. But we're also going to be digging into trauma. We're going to be digging into mindset. We're going to be digging into spiritual warfare and how hormones and cortisol levels living in chronic stress isn't how you're meant to live. The whole idea is let's help women fast track those 8 years and get some answers, get some clarity on how they can truly step into healing their own body so that they can become the best version of themselves. If I can save them any amount of time off of the 8 years that I spent navigating this overwhelming journey and who do I listen to? Who do I talk to? How do I know what's right, especially in a noisy online social media world? That's the vision for the podcast.
I am so excited for this. This is going to be epic. You're bringing a voice to this insane Instagram following that you have because Instagram, on the videos and the content that you put out, people hear and see you when they're on Instagram. But let's face it, social media, it depends on when you log in to certain platforms, whether they're on Facebook or on Instagram or on TikTok. And I say that because me, myself, I don't go on every platform every day. It just depends on when I
Oh,
have downtime and when I can scroll and how much time I have. So for you to be rolling out this podcast that anyone can throw an AirPod in their ear and be walking or driving in the car or sitting on the beach or whatever you're doing, and they can actually consume this content and hear from you and specialists and all the things, it's going to help so many people's lives. So excited for you. And I think it's needed. I think it's authentic, conversations that people are craving. They're craving these conversations and the knowledge and the help and the support. So I'm excited. So on that
thank
note,
you.
other social medias, I'm going to link everything below this episode, but where else do we find you? Where would people ideally connect with you? I mean, I know IG. Where else?
I'm most active on IG under cortisol_coach. And then the new podcast, you can just search cortisol coach on any platform that you listen to podcasts on.
Okay.
And I do have my Facebook. It's not as exciting over there.
It's funny Christine says that's not exciting over there. Christine and I are in different worlds. I find Facebook extremely exciting because it's where
Yeah.
I built most of my own personal business and I struggle being consistent on the other platforms, but Christine is 100 through and through. Your IG girl, knows all the ins and outs, how to do it, how to go viral, how to stay consistent, what to post, when to post. Girl, what you've built over there is insane. I just got to say that.
Thank you. It's so fun, and I think that's part of my like we were talking about authenticity. I have always wanted to live on Instagram, so that's where I love showing up. What makes me most excited is on my Instagram, I talk a lot about the company that I've linked arms with and the
Mhm.
products that have changed my life, but this podcast is not about the products at all.
Mm-mm.
It's just knowledge, and knowledge is power, so I'm most excited about that. So the podcast is probably the best place for anybody outside of the US to connect with me, and then Instagram if you're in the US or just wanna send me a message and connect.
Yay! I love it. Definitely subscribe to her podcast when it comes out. And I just want to mention this as well. If anyone listening has anyone that's maybe in fostering or looking to foster, we can send them to, I'll link your other podcast here below as well.
Awesome, thank you so much.
Appreciate you. Thanks, girl.
Bye.
Here's what I want you to walk away with from this conversation. Christine didn't build a $6 million business by having it all figured out. She built it through 77 kids, an identity crisis, a hallway floor, and 11 years of deciding to keep going anyway. And here's the thing, her body was sending her signals the entire time. The cortisol, the weight, the exhaustion. It wasn't failure, it was data. So if this episode hit different today, share it with a woman that needs to hear it. That's how we build something that matters. New episodes drop every Thursday.